The immigration papers hit the marble desk with a sound like a judge's gavel. Final, damning, absolute. "Sign them," Julian Vance said, his voice carrying the kind of cold precision that had built billion-dollar empires and destroyed countless lives. "You have 72 hours before federal agents arrive at whatever hole you're hiding in." Natalia Reyes stared at the man she'd married in a garden ceremony 6 months ago, the man who'd promised her forever while privately planning her destruction. Her hands trembled as she picked up the documents. Notice to appear. Deportation proceedings. Her entire American existence reduced to government letterhead and legal threats. "You filed deportation papers against your own wife?" Her voice cracked, disbelief warring with rage. "You were never really my wife." Julian straightened his custom Tom Ford suit, checking his Patek Philippe watch as if scheduling her annihilation was just another calendar entry. "You were a strategic acquisition that's outlived its usefulness. My lawyers assure me you'll be on a plane to Colombia by Friday." The Chicago skyline glittered behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows, a city of dreams that had become her nightmare. She'd come to America with scholarships and hope. She'd cleaned toilets to afford textbooks. She'd believed in possibility. And she'd made the fatal mistake of believing in him. "I loved you," Natalia whispered. "Then you were a fool." Julian turned his back on her, already moving to his next conquest, his next manipulation. "My driver will escort you out. Don't take anything that isn't yours, which legally is everything in this penthouse." Natalia stood there, deportation papers clutched in shaking hands, her green card dreams incinerated by the man who'd sworn to protect her, the billionaire who'd courted her with patience and promises, the husband who'd whispered forever against her skin. He wanted her gone, erased, deported. But here's what Julian Vance didn't know. The woman he'd underestimated was about to become his worst nightmare. Because sometimes, the person who files deportation papers isn't the one who gets to stay. And sometimes, the people who think they're untouchable discover that justice has very long arms. Natalia Reyes was about to teach her billionaire husband a lesson he'd never forget. When you try to deport a woman's dreams, she might just deport your entire empire. Before we dive deep into this journey of power, betrayal, and ultimate vindication, let me speak a word of blessing over your life. May the Almighty grant you strength when powerful forces try to diminish you. May you find courage when the systems designed to protect you instead weaponize your vulnerabilities. May every enemy who plots your downfall witness your rise instead. May justice, though delayed, find its way to your doorstep. And may you never forget that your worth isn't determined by papers, status, or the opinions of those who underestimated you. If these words touch your spirit, comment below. I am with Mr. Douglas Stories, and join a community that believes in the power of fighting back. Now, let's witness how Natalia Reyes turned her deportation into Julian Vance's destruction. 6 months earlier, Natalia Reyes had learned 3 things about America in her 5 years living there. Money talked, love was transactional, and immigration status could make you invisible even in a crowded room. She'd come from Colombia on a student visa, studying international business at Northwestern University with a scholarship that barely covered books. By day, she attended lectures on corporate strategy. By night, She worked 2 jobs, waitressing at an upscale restaurant in River North and cleaning offices in the Loop. Sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford, but giving up wasn't in her vocabulary. That's where Julian Vance first saw her. He'd walked into Marcello's on a rainy Thursday evening, surrounded by associates in $1,000 suits, and she'd served him a perfectly prepared osso buco without flinching under the weight of his stare. Julian was 34, 6'3", with the kind of sharp features that made him look perpetually calculating. His company, Vance Tech Solutions, had just gone public, making him the youngest billionaire in Chicago. "You're different," he'd told her that night, tipping her $500 on a $60 bill. "Because I didn't ask for your autograph," she'd replied, unimpressed. That made him laugh. Julian Vance didn't laugh often. 3 weeks later, he asked her to dinner. She declined. 2 months after that, he sent a car to her apartment. She sent it back. Finally, he showed up at her university, waiting outside her economics final with Colombian coffee and an admission. "I don't chase women, but I can't seem to stop chasing you." Natalia had walls built from disappointment and reinforced with survival instinct. But Julian was patient, or maybe just obsessed. He courted her with thoughtfulness that felt genuine, remembering her favorite flowers, sunflowers, never roses, learning basic Spanish to speak with her mother on video calls, attending her graduation when her own family couldn't afford the flight. When he proposed 4 months later on a yacht in Lake Michigan, with a 5-carat diamond and tears in his eyes, she said yes. Not because of his money, though poverty had taught her its value. She said yes because she believed he saw her. Natalia, not the immigrant, not the scholarship student, not the girl scrubbing office floors at midnight. The wedding was intimate, held at the Chicago Botanic Garden. Julian's mother, Patricia Vance, old money wrapped in pearls and passive aggression, had barely concealed her disgust. His best friend, Cameron Foster, had been equally cold during the reception. But Julian had held Natalia's hand throughout, whispering promises of forever. "You're my family now," he'd said. "Nothing will ever change that." She'd believed him. God, she'd actually believed him. The first 3 months of marriage felt like living inside a jewelry box, beautiful, but increasingly suffocating. Julian's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a luxury building overlooking the Chicago River. The master bedroom alone was larger than the apartment Natalia had shared with 2 roommates. There were smart home systems, a private gym, a wine cellar stocked with bottles worth more than cars, and a staff that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. But wealth couldn't purchase warmth. Patricia Vance made her disapproval known through backhanded compliments delivered with surgical precision. "Natalia, darling, that dress is brave, very ethnic," or "I'm sure Julian finds your accent charming. It's very authentic." Cameron Foster was worse. Julian's best friend since boarding school, Cameron was Chief Operations Officer at Vance Tech and spent more time with Julian than Natalia did. Their conversations ended when she entered rooms. Documents disappeared into briefcases. Calls were taken behind closed doors. "You're paranoid," Julian said when she mentioned it. "Cameron's protective of me. He'll warm up." But Cameron's cold blue eyes held something darker than protectiveness. They held calculation. Still, Natalia tried. She attended Vance Tech galas in borrowed designer gowns, made small talk with women who discussed summer homes like others discussed weather, and smiled through dinners where she was introduced as Julian's wife, but never by name. She'd started immigration paperwork for her green card, but the process was slow and expensive, something Julian promised his lawyers would expedite. "Don't worry about anything," he'd assure her, distracted by his phone. "I'm taking care of it." The sex was still good, passionate, even desperate at times, as if Julian was trying to prove something through physical connection. But the emotional intimacy began to fade. He worked 16-hour days, came home exhausted, spent weekends at the office or golfing with investors. Natalia filled her time learning to be the wife of a billionaire, taking etiquette classes, volunteering at approved charities, decorating their home with an interior designer she didn't choose. She was becoming a beautiful, hollow version of herself. Then came the night everything shifted. She'd woken at 2 a.m. to an empty bed and found Julian in his study, surrounded by spreadsheets and talking urgently into his phone. When she'd approached, he'd quickly ended the call. "Who was that?" she'd asked. "Work." "At 2 in the morning?" "Natalia, I don't question your every move. Because I'm transparent with you, Julian. You're becoming a stranger." He'd stood then, crossing to her, with that intense focus that once made her knees weak. "I'm building an empire. That requires sacrifice. I thought you understood that." "I understand sacrifice. What I don't understand is secrecy." Something flickered in his eyes, guilt, fear, before his expression hardened. "You're my wife. That means trusting me, not interrogating me." She'd returned to bed alone that night, staring at the ceiling and wondering when "my wife" had become a title that silenced rather than empowered her. The answer came 3 weeks later, delivered with champagne and shattered glass. If you're already feeling the tension building, you know this story is about to explode. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the twists coming will leave you speechless. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. And drop a like if you're already Team Natalia. She's going to need your support. Sign them. Natalia stared at the papers Julian had slid across his desk. United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. Notice to appear. Removal proceedings. Her vision blurred. "What is this?" "Your student visa expired 8 months ago," Julian said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You're in the country illegally. I've filed the paperwork to report you to ICE." The floor seemed to tilt. "My visa? You said your lawyers were handling my green card application." "I lied." 2 words, delivered like bullets. Natalia gripped the edge of his desk, her knuckles white. You lied? For 6 months, you've been lying?" "Our marriage was a mistake." Julian's jaw tightened. "I was thinking with the wrong head. My mother was right. You were after my money. A green card marriage. Classic immigrant con." Rage ignited in her chest, burning away the shock. "I loved you. I turned down your money multiple times before I even agreed to dinner." Past tense, loved, interesting choice. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with mechanical precision. "The truth is, Vance Tech is going public with a new investment round. My board, my investors, they're old America money, conservative, family values. Having a wife with an expired visa, potentially here illegally, is a PR nightmare. So you married me, knowing my visa status, promised to help me, And now you're, what, disposing of me like a bad investment? Business is business, Natalia. She laughed, a harsh, broken sound. I cleaned toilets to afford textbooks. I sent money home to my mother who's fighting cancer. I worked myself to exhaustion because I believed in the American dream. And you're proving that dream is a lie wrapped in a flag. Sign the acknowledgement form, Julian said coldly. You have 72 hours before federal agents come for you. If you sign, leave quietly, and don't cause problems, I'll ensure you're deported humanely. If you fight this, I'll make sure you're detained, prosecuted, and permanently barred from ever returning. Where is this coming from? Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. The man I married never existed. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at her, with something that might have been regret, or just impatience. I'm late for a meeting. My driver will take you to pack your things. You're no longer welcome in this home. The penthouse. Their home. Except it had never been hers, had it? Just another borrowed space in her borrowed life. Natalia straightened her spine, drawing on every ounce of strength her mother had instilled in her. I won't sign anything, and I won't leave without a fight. Then you're a fool. Maybe, but at least I'm not a coward who destroys people because a boardroom tells him to. She turned and walked out, head high, even as her world crumbled around her. Natalia had $300 in her personal checking account, no legal status, and 72 hours before federal agents potentially came for her. She couldn't go to a hotel. They'd require ID, and she couldn't risk alerting authorities. Most of her friends were Julian's friends. His money had gradually isolated her from her old life, except for one person. Rosa Martinez answered on the second ring. Natalia, girl, it's almost midnight. I need help. Her voice cracked. Please. 20 minutes later, Natalia stood in Rosa's modest apartment in Pilsen, the predominantly Latino neighborhood she'd left behind when she married Julian. Rosa, her former roommate from university, took one look at her tear-stained face and pulled her into a fierce hug. Tell me everything. So she did. The marriage, the promises, the deportation papers. Rosa listened with growing fury, her dark eyes flashing. That hijo de puta, Rosa spat, using immigration status as a weapon? That's not just cruel, it's evil. I don't know what to do. Natalia sank onto Rosa's worn couch. If I run, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. If I turn myself in, I'll be deported and banned from returning. My mother, she needs my financial support for her treatments. First, you breathe. Rosa disappeared into her kitchen and returned with tea. Second, we think. You said Julian filed the paperwork. Did you actually see proof? Natalia frowned. He showed me removal proceedings documents with my name. Could be fabricated. Rich men use intimidation because it's cheaper than actual legal action. Rosa pulled out her laptop. My cousin's wife is an immigration attorney. Let me reach out. While Rosa made calls, Natalia's mind raced. Something about Julian's behavior didn't add up. 6 months of marriage, and suddenly he's not just ending things, but actively trying to deport her. The Julian she'd known was cold in business, but this felt orchestrated. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered, Mrs. Vance, a woman's voice, crisp and professional. My name is Lydia Chen. I'm an investigative journalist with the Chicago Tribune. I've been following Vance Tech's business practices, and I believe you might be in danger. Natalia's pulse quickened. How did you get this number? I have sources. Can we meet? There are things about your husband you need to know. Things that might explain why he's suddenly trying to remove you from the picture. I don't know you. Why would I trust you? Because in 3 days, ICE is scheduled to detain you. But here's what they won't tell you. Your deportation isn't about your visa status. It's about making you disappear before you discover what Vance Tech is really doing with their new defense contracts. The line went dead. Natalia stared at her phone, heart hammering. Defense contracts? Julian's company developed cybersecurity software for corporations. At least, that's what he'd told her. Rosa returned. Phone pressed to her shoulder. My cousin's wife can see you tomorrow morning, but… Natalia, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I think, Natalia said slowly, I just discovered I wasn't married to the man I thought I knew at all. Lydia Chen looked nothing like Natalia expected. The journalist was mid-40s, sharply dressed, with grey streaking her black hair and eyes that had seen too many lies. They met in a crowded Starbucks in Logan Square, where anonymity came easy. Thank you for coming, Lydia said, sliding a folder across the table. Everything I'm about to tell you is documented. But first, are you prepared for your marriage to be exposed as something other than what you believed? Natalia's jaw tightened. After the last 24 hours, I'm prepared for anything. Good. Lydia opened the folder. Julian Vance founded Vance Tech 8 years ago with venture capital from traditional sources, legitimate business. But 3 years ago, he took on a silent partner, a shell corporation called Meridian Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands. I've never heard of them. You wouldn't have. Meridian funnels money from questionable sources, foreign governments, defense contractors with ties to human rights violations, even suspected organized crime. Vance Tech's public face is corporate cybersecurity. Their private contracts, surveillance software sold to authoritarian regimes. Natalia felt sick. Julian told me he was making the internet safer for businesses. He's making it safer for dictators to monitor dissidents. Lydia pulled out photographs. Julian shaking hands with men Natalia didn't recognize. Documents with redacted sections. Bank transfers in the millions. 6 months ago, Vance Tech secured a major contract with a Middle Eastern government accused of murdering journalists. The deal is worth $2 billion, but it requires squeaky clean public image and American government approval. And a wife with immigration problems destroys that image, Natalia finished, understanding dawning like ice water. More than that, you're Colombian. Vance Tech is also being investigated for potential money laundering through South American channels. If immigration authorities dig into your background while investigating Julian's marriage, they might uncover financial connections he's been hiding. You're not a liability because of your visa status. You're a liability because you're a thread that could unravel his entire criminal enterprise. Natalia's hands shook. So he married me, lied about helping with my green card, and now he's trying to deport me before I accidentally lead investigators to his illegal operations. That's my working theory, but here's what he didn't count on. You fighting back. I'm one woman with no legal status against a billionaire with unlimited resources, Natalia said bitterly. What can I possibly do? Lydia's smile was sharp. You can help me bring him down. I've been investigating Vance Tech for 18 months, but I need an inside source. You lived in his home. You must have seen something. Documents, overheard conversations, access to his computers. He kept his work locked down. I rarely saw... Natalia stopped, remembering. Wait, there's a safe. In his study, behind a painting of the Chicago skyline. I saw him open it once. The combination... He thought I wasn't paying attention, but I memorized it. What's inside? I don't know. He always closed it before I could see. Lydia leaned forward. If we could access that safe, photograph its contents. I can't get back into the penthouse. He's probably changed security codes. Actually, came a voice behind them. He hasn't. Both women turned. Cameron Foster stood there, perfectly groomed as always, but his expression wasn't the hostile mask Natalia was used to. It was guilty. What the hell? Natalia stood, ready to bolt. Did Julian send you? Julian thinks I'm in Detroit meeting with investors. Cameron held up his hands in surrender. Please sit. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help. Natalia didn't sit. You've treated me like dirt since I married Julian. Why would you possibly help me now? Cameron's jaw worked. Because I didn't know. Not until yesterday. Didn't know what? That Julian was planning to destroy you. He ran a hand through his hair. The first time Natalia had seen him anything less than composed. I knew he was planning to file for divorce. I thought it was mutual, a marriage that didn't work out. When I found the deportation paperwork on his desk yesterday, I realized, he exhaled slowly, I realized the man I considered my best friend is capable of unconscionable cruelty. Lydia studied him with journalistic skepticism. Cameron Foster, COO of Vance Tech, Julian's right hand for 12 years. Why the sudden attack of conscience? Because some lines shouldn't be crossed. I've looked the other way on aggressive business tactics. I've rationalized contracts with unsavory clients as navigating global markets, but using immigration law as a weapon against someone who trusted you. That's not business. That's evil. He focused on Natalia. I was cold to you because I thought you were a gold digger. Julian's dated women who only saw dollar signs. I thought you were more sophisticated about it, but ultimately the same. I was wrong. You genuinely loved him. I saw it at your wedding, and I've seen it in how hard you've tried to fit into his world. Guilt shadowed his face. I should have been kinder. I'm sorry. Natalia wanted to stay angry, but exhaustion was winning. Why are you really here, Cameron? Because Julian's not just crossing moral lines, he's crossing legal ones, and he's dragging me down with him. Cameron pulled out his phone, showing them emails. These contracts with Meridian Holdings, I helped broker them. I didn't ask enough questions. Now if Vance Tech goes down, I go down as an accessory. So you're saving your own skin, Lydia observed. I'm doing what I should have done 2 years ago, choosing ethics over loyalty. Cameron looked at Natalia. Julian keeps hard evidence in that safe. Contracts, communications, financial records he can't risk storing digitally. If we can access it before he moves or destroys everything, we can expose him. Why would you betray your best friend? Natalia asked. Cameron's expression hardened. Because he stopped being my friend The moment he decided to weaponize human suffering for profit, and because my sister married an immigrant from Pakistan. I watched her struggle with the system for 5 years. If someone had weaponized her status against her, I'd want someone to fight back. The three of them sat in heavy silence. Finally, Natalia spoke. If we do this, if we access that safe, it's not just about revenge, it's about justice. For every person Julian's software has helped oppress, for every immigrant he's demonized while married to one, for every law he's broken while hiding behind respectability. Agreed, Lydia said. This is bigger than personal vendetta. It's about accountability. Cameron nodded. I can get you into the penthouse. Julian's in San Francisco until tomorrow night meeting with investors, but we have maybe a 6-hour window before his security team rotates shifts. Then we move tonight, Natalia decided, and we document everything. Are you still breathing? Because this story is about to take turns you won't see coming. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Seriously, you're going to want notifications on for the moment this whole thing explodes. Like this video if you're ready for Natalia to take back her power. And comment below what you think is in that safe. Let's go. At 1:47 a.m., 3 unlikely allies entered the building that had been Natalia's gilded cage. Cameron's access codes worked. The night security guard, someone Natalia had always greeted warmly, waved them through without question. Evening, Mr. Foster, Mrs. Vance. Working late? Forgot some documents, Cameron said smoothly. Won't be long. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt eternal. Natalia's heart hammered against her ribs. Lydia adjusted the small camera hidden in her purse. Cameron's face was unreadable. The penthouse was dark, illuminated only by the Chicago skyline, glittering beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. Natalia led them to Julian's study, the room where, just yesterday, her marriage had been executed. The painting of Chicago hung where it always had. Natalia approached it, hands trembling slightly. She could feel Cameron and Lydia watching her. The combination, Lydia prompted, 1708-3421. Natalia recited the numbers she'd memorized months ago, not knowing they'd become her weapon. Julian's birthday, reversed. The safe clicked open. Inside were folders, USB drives, a laptop, and something Natalia didn't expect, a second phone, the kind people used for communications they didn't want traced. Jackpot, Lydia breathed, immediately beginning to photograph documents. Cameron powered up the laptop, bypassing the password with practiced ease. I set up his security protocols. I know his back doors. Natalia pulled out folders, her hands shaking as she saw what they contained. Contracts for surveillance software sold to governments with documented human rights abuses. Communications between Julian and Meridian Holdings discussing eliminating problematic witnesses. 3 journalists who'd been investigating similar tech companies had died in the past 18 months. Accidents, officially. Financial records showing money laundering through Colombian shell companies, companies that shared addresses with known cartel fronts. And then, the folder that made Natalia's blood run cold, a file labeled N. Reyes Contingency. She opened it with numb fingers. Inside was everything. Surveillance reports on her from before they'd even met. Psychological profiles. Financial records showing every dollar she'd sent home to her mother. Recordings of her phone calls. God, he'd been listening to her conversations with her dying mother. There were notes in Julian's handwriting. Subject shows strong family loyalty and financial desperation. Visa status provides leverage. Marriage proposal strategically timed with mother's diagnosis. Subject likely to comply if threatened with inability to support family. 6-month timeline sufficient to establish marriage legitimacy for preliminary business purposes. Deportation strategy to be implemented once Chinese government contracts secured. Subject's Colombian background useful for establishing South American business front. Terminate relationship before deeper investigation possible. He marked me, Natalia whispered, her vision blurring. From the beginning, I was never a person to him. I was an asset, a tool. Cameron looked over her shoulder and swore viciously. Jesus Christ, Julian. What have you become? Lydia was photographing everything, her face grim with professional focus. This is premeditated exploitation, possibly trafficking, definitely fraud. Natalia, were you aware he was using your background to establish business connections in Colombia? No, I thought, her voice broke. I thought he loved me. He loved what you could do for him, Cameron said quietly. I'm so sorry. They spent 2 hours documenting everything, every page photographed, every file copied, the burner phone's contents downloaded. By the time they finished, they had evidence of illegal surveillance software sales, money laundering, potential conspiracy in the deaths of journalists, immigration fraud, domestic abuse through coercion, and enough financial crimes to send Julian Vance to federal prison for decades. We need to move this to a secure location, Lydia said, uploading files to an encrypted cloud server. If Julian discovers we access the safe, the penthouse lights blazed on. Too late for that. Julian's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 private security guards Natalia had never seen before. His expression was colder than she'd ever witnessed. Really, Cameron? Julian's gaze fixed on his former friend. You're going to betray me for this illegal immigrant and a journalist? I'm stopping you from destroying more lives, Cameron replied evenly. It's overdue. Julian's laugh was ugly. You helped build this empire. You think you're innocent? You're going down right alongside me if this becomes public. I know, but at least I'll be able to sleep at night. Julian turned to Natalia. And you, I gave you everything, pulled you from poverty, made you somebody. You made me a pawn. Natalia's voice was steady despite her racing heart. Every moment of our relationship was a lie. Not every moment. Something flickered in Julian's expression. Regret, pain, before it hardened again. The sex was real. How generous. You're not leaving with those documents, Julian said, nodding to his security guards. Nobody is. The guards advanced. Cameron stepped in front of the women. Julian, don't make this worse. Worse? You've already stolen proprietary information. That's corporate espionage. I'll have you prosecuted. Actually, Lydia said calmly, pulling out her phone, everything we accessed was already in transit to the FBI 10 minutes ago, along with copies to the Chicago Tribune, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. Your illegal activities are being reviewed by federal agents as we speak. Julian's face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? The journalist you had killed in Guatemala, Marco Rivera, was my colleague. I've been building this case for 18 months. Natalia was the missing piece. the insider witness who could testify to your character, your methods, your willingness to destroy innocent lives. Lydia's smile was razor-sharp. You tried to deport her to silence her. Instead, you gave her every reason to speak. "I'll destroy all of you," Julian snarled. "My lawyers are very good, but they can't make evidence disappear once it's in federal hands." Lydia pocketed her phone. "Special Agent Marcus Riley of the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division will be here within the hour. I suggest you call those expensive lawyers now." For the first time since Natalia had known him, Julian Vance looked afraid. The security guards exchanged glances, then quietly stepped back. They were hired help, not criminals. Cameron walked past Julian without a word. Lydia followed. Natalia paused in front of her husband, though not for much longer. "You wanted to know why I came to America. It wasn't for money. It was because my mother told me this country rewarded hard work, courage, and integrity. You proved her wrong about America, but I'm going to prove her right." She left him standing alone in his fortress of lies. The next 72 hours exploded across national news. Vancetech CEO arrested in international surveillance. Scandal billionaire. Tech mogul faces charges. Money laundering. Conspiracy. Immigration fraud. Surveillance software. Linked to journalist deaths. Federal investigation expands. Julian Vance was arrested at his penthouse at 4:23 a.m. by federal agents. His perp walk, in handcuffs, photographers swarming, became the defining image of tech industry corruption. Vancetech's stock plummeted. The board of directors immediately distanced themselves. Investors sued. International contracts were terminated. Patricia Vance issued a statement expressing shock and disappointment, while quietly liquidating her son's trust fund assets before they could be frozen. Cameron Foster cooperated with investigators, providing testimony in exchange for reduced charges. His reputation was destroyed, but he'd kept his promise, choosing ethics over loyalty. Lydia Chen's investigative series won her a Pulitzer Prize nomination. She dedicated the work to the immigrants weaponized by those who should have protected them. And Natalia did something she'd never thought possible. She fought back so effectively that the system changed around her. The immigration attorney Rosa's cousin recommended took her case pro bono once the media exposure began. The deportation proceedings were withdrawn. Julian's falsified immigration complaints were exposed as retaliation. With Cameron's testimony confirming the marriage had been based on genuine affection before Julian's betrayal, Natalia's green card application was fast-tracked. But more than that, Natalia became a voice. She testified before Congress about how immigration status could be weaponized by abusers. She spoke at universities about recognizing exploitation disguised as opportunity. She started a foundation supporting immigrant women in abusive relationships, funded entirely by the lawsuit settlement she won against Julian. $8 million. Her lawyers had advised accepting Vancetech's initial offer of $2 million to settle quietly. "No," Natalia had said, "we go to trial. Every detail becomes public record. Every woman who's been threatened with deportation by a partner needs to see that fighting back is possible." The jury had awarded her $8 million in compensatory damages and recommended criminal charges for domestic abuse through immigration threats. Julian's defense lawyers tried everything: character assassination, claims of gold digging, suggestions she'd known about the illegal activities, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes, guilty on 17 counts. 23 years in federal prison. 6 months after Julian's arrest, Natalia stood in an immigration office in downtown Chicago, not as someone being deported, as someone finally, legitimately, becoming a permanent resident. The officer, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, handed her the green card. "Congratulations, Ms. Reyes. Welcome home." Home, America. The country that had almost destroyed her was now recognizing her right to stay. Rosa waited outside with champagne. They celebrated in the office parking lot, laughing and crying simultaneously. "Your mother would be so proud," Rosa said. Natalia's smile dimmed. Her mother had passed away 3 weeks earlier, finally succumbing to the cancer she'd fought for years. But she'd lived long enough to see her daughter vindicated, long enough to know Natalia had survived. "She told me something before she died," Natalia shared. She said, "Men like Julian exist to test women like you, to see if you'll break or if you'll become steel. I think I'm finally understanding what she meant." Her phone buzzed. Cameron's name appeared. They'd maintained an unexpected friendship through the chaos. He'd lost everything: his career, his reputation, most of his wealth to legal fees and settlements. But he'd gained something more valuable: integrity. "Natalia, have you seen the news?" "What now?" "Julian. He's trying to broker a deal with prosecutors, claiming he has information on bigger fish, international arms dealers, government corruption. He's trying to reduce his sentence." Natalia closed her eyes. Of course he was. Julian would never accept responsibility, would never admit genuine wrongdoing. He'd game the system until his last breath. "Will it work?" she asked. "Maybe. Federal prosecutors love big cases. If Julian can give them corruption at higher levels, they might reduce his time." "How much?" 10 years instead of 23. Natalia felt the old anger stir, but beneath it was something new: peace. Let them make their deals. Julian will still spend a decade in prison. His empire is destroyed. His reputation is ashes. And me? She looked at her green card, then at Rosa smiling beside her, then at the Chicago skyline, where she'd built a life through sheer determination. "I'm free." 3 months later, Natalia received an envelope. No return address. Chicago postmark. Inside was a letter, handwritten on yellow legal paper. "Natalia, by the time you read this, I'll be in federal custody at a facility I can't name. My lawyers advised me not to contact you. My mother forbade it. Cameron would call me insane. But I need you to know something, even if you never believe it. I loved you." Not at first. At first, you were exactly what the document said: an opportunity, a strategy. But somewhere between the wedding and the moment I had to betray you, something changed. I started actually listening when you talked about your mother, started caring when you fell as in love with the city, started fearing what my business was becoming because I saw it through your eyes. That's why I got so cold. Not because I stopped caring, because I cared too much. I was in too deep with Meridian, too committed to contracts I couldn't exit without consequences. So I convinced myself you were the problem, that removing you would restore my focus, that I could separate the man from the monster. I was wrong. The deportation papers were real. So was my intent to use them. I'm not asking forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to understand. The cruelty you experienced wasn't indifference. It was cowardice. I was too weak to choose you over the empire I'd built, so I chose to destroy you instead. You fought back. You won. And somehow, in losing everything, I finally understood what I'd lost when I lost you. You deserved better than me. You deserved better than all of this. But you survived, and somehow that makes the consequences easier to bear. I hope Colombia remembers you fondly. I hope America treats you with the dignity I failed to provide. I hope you find someone who sees your worth from the beginning, not when it's too late. Natalia read the letter 3 times. Then she did something Julian probably didn't expect. She wrote back, Julian, your letter arrived on the day I officially became a U.S. permanent resident. I celebrated with friends, with community, with people who valued me before I could offer them anything in return. It was one of the happiest days of my life. I'm glad you feel remorse. I hope it's genuine. But remorse doesn't erase harm. Love, if that's what you felt, doesn't excuse weaponizing someone's vulnerability. You taught me something valuable, that power without accountability is tyranny, that love without integrity is manipulation, that promises mean nothing without action. I forgive you, but not for your peace, for mine. Carrying hatred is exhausting, and I'm building a life too beautiful to be weighed down by bitterness. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean I'll visit, write again, or think of you as anything other than a painful chapter I've closed. You filed my deportation papers, but I'm the one who left your toxicity, your lies, your gilded prison. And unlike you, I left with my dignity intact. May you find whatever redemption is possible behind bars. May you use your years to become someone worthy of the second chance you denied others. But may you do it without me. Natalia. She mailed the letter, then returned home to the apartment she'd purchased with her settlement money, modest compared to Julian's penthouse, but entirely hers. Rosa was cooking dinner. Cameron would arrive later with wine. Her immigration attorney, now a friend, was bringing dessert. Her foundation's board meeting was scheduled for tomorrow. Life was full. Life was complicated. Life was sometimes still hard, but it was her life, on her terms, built by her hands. The doorbell rang. Natalia answered to find a courier with a package. Delivery for Natalia Reyes. Sign here? She signed, tipped him, and brought the package inside. The return address was from the federal prosecutor's office. Inside was a letter. Miss Reyes, as part of Mr. Vance's cooperation agreement, he was required to provide information on all assets and hidden accounts. During that process, an account was discovered in your name, established before your marriage, using your identification documents without your knowledge. The account contains 2.7 million. Our investigation confirms these funds came from legitimate business profits before Mr. Vance's criminal activities began. They were set up as bride price or compensation, though Mr. Vance claims he intended them as genuine gift before the relationship soured. Regardless of intent, the account is legally yours. The funds have been cleared of any criminal taint and are being released to you. Additionally, several of Mr. Vance's international victims have requested your involvement in their civil cases. Your testimony regarding his methods has been invaluable. They're asking if you'd consider serving as an advocate. If interested, please contact my office. Sincerely, Special Agent Marcus Riley, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Natalia stared at the letter, then at the account information. 2.7 million hidden in her name. Another manipulation. A guilty conscience. A genuine gift corrupted by its giver's sins. It didn't matter. She knew exactly what she'd do with it. Her foundation would triple in size. More women would escape abusive relationships. More immigrants would receive legal support. Julian had tried to use her as a pawn. Now his money, legitimate money from before his fall, would fund her mission. She called Rosa into the room. "Remember when we talked about opening offices in other cities?" "Yeah, but we didn't have the funding." Rosa saw Natalia's face. "What happened?" "Justice happened. Complicated, messy, unexpected justice." Natalia smiled. "We're expanding. Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, wherever immigrant women need voices." "With what money?" "Julian's, or mine, technically, or maybe it's the universe's way of balancing scales." Rosa whooped, pulling her into a hug. "This is insane. How much are we talking?" "Enough to change thousands of lives." That evening, as they celebrated, Natalia thought about the question she'd been asked again and again by journalists, lawyers, and other survivors. How did you find the courage to fight back? Her answer was always the same. Because staying silent would have destroyed me slower than he ever could. Fighting gave me a chance to survive as myself. 2 years later, Natalia stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., testifying before a Senate subcommittee on immigration reform. Her foundation had become nationally recognized. She'd published a memoir that spent 14 weeks on bestseller lists. She'd become the voice for a movement. "The question isn't whether immigrants contribute to America," she said, her voice steady and strong. "The question is whether America will protect immigrants from those who exploit their status." My husband, my ex-husband, filed deportation papers to silence me. He failed. But how many others succeed? How many voices are lost because the system can be weaponized? The senators listened, some sympathetically, others skeptically, but they were listening. That was what mattered. After her testimony, as she walked through the Capitol building, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then curiosity won. "Hello? Miss Reyes, this is Warden Thompson from FCI Fort Wayne. I'm calling about Julian Vance." Natalia's stomach tightened. "Is he? He's alive, but there's been an incident. Mr. Vance was attacked by another inmate. He's in medical care, stable, but he's requested to speak with you." I haven't seen or spoken to Julian in 2 years beyond that one letter. "I understand, but he's been insistent. He claims there's information you need regarding threats to your safety." Natalia closed her eyes. Even from prison, Julian was trying to manipulate her. "I'm not interested in, ma'am. The inmate who attacked him was hired. The FBI is investigating connections to Meridian Holdings' surviving leadership. Mr. Vance believes you may be targeted as well." That changed things. 3 days later, Natalia sat across from Julian Vance in a federal prison visiting room. He looked nothing like the powerful billionaire she'd married. His face was bruised, one arm in a sling. His hair had grayed. His eyes held something new. Fear. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "The FBI thinks I'm in danger. That's the only reason I'm here." Fair enough. Julian looked down at his hands that once commanded empires, now cuffed during movement. "Meridian didn't disappear when I was arrested. The people I was involved with They're worried about what I told prosecutors, and they know you were part of exposing everything. So they sent someone to attack you as a message. To me, to Cameron, and yes, potentially, to you. He met her eyes. I destroyed your life once. I'm trying to prevent someone from taking it entirely. How noble. I don't expect your gratitude, but the FBI is taking the threat seriously. They're offering protective custody for key witnesses. Natalia laughed bitterly. So I escape your deportation, only to end up in witness protection. The irony. You've built something important. Your foundation, your advocacy, it matters. Don't let these people destroy that. Why do you care? I'm the woman you tried to erase. Julian's face twisted with something that might have been genuine remorse. Because I've had 2 years to sit in a cell and understand what I destroyed. Every life I harmed, every person I exploited. You, most of all. He leaned forward slightly. I can't fix what I did, but maybe I can keep them from finishing what I started. Information doesn't absolve you, Julian. I know, but it might save you. Over the next hour, Julian provided details, names, financial trails, locations of Meridian operatives. The FBI agents listening took notes furiously. This would lead to new arrests, new investigations. When they finished, Natalia stood to leave. Natalia, Julian's voice stopped her. One more thing. The person you've become, the foundation, the advocacy, standing up to systems that failed you, I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to be, but I am. She turned, studying him. The man who'd filed her deportation papers, the man who'd tried to erase her existence, now bruised and broken, paying for his crimes. You filed my deportation papers, she said slowly. You tried to make me leave, but guess what, Julian? He waited. You're the one who left first. You left behind decency, integrity, humanity. You deported yourself from everything that makes a person worth knowing. I'm still here, free, powerful, making a difference. And you? She gestured at the prison around them. You removed yourself from society more effectively than immigration ever could have removed me. She walked out without looking back. 6 months after that prison visit, Meridian Holdings' remaining leadership was arrested in a coordinated international operation. The FBI credited both Julian's cooperation and Natalia's willingness to work with investigators. The threats ended. Julian served 8 years of his reduced sentence before being released on parole. He moved to a small town in Oregon, worked as a software consultant for nonprofits, and never contacted Natalia again. He'd learned, finally, that some bridges burn for good reason. Cameron rebuilt his life slowly, teaching business ethics at a community college, volunteering with immigrant rights organizations, trying to atone for the years he'd enabled Julian's crimes. Lydia Chen published 3 more investigative series on tech industry corruption. She and Natalia remained friends. Rosa became COO of Natalia's foundation, which expanded to 12 cities and helped over 10,000 women in its first 5 years. And Natalia, she became a U.S. citizen 3 years after obtaining her green card. The ceremony was held on the 4th of July because the universe has a sense of irony. She took the oath surrounded by other immigrants from 60 different countries, doctors, engineers, teachers, dreamers. When the judge said, "Congratulations, you are now American citizens," Natalia felt something shift in her chest, not just legal status, identity, belonging, home. She'd come to America as a student with dreams, been exploited by a billionaire who saw her as a tool, nearly been deported by a husband who'd promised forever. And through it all, she'd fought back with everything she had. The American dream hadn't been handed to her. She'd clawed it from the wreckage of betrayal. That night, at her citizenship celebration, someone asked the question that had haunted her journey. Do you regret marrying Julian? If you could go back, would you avoid all of this? Natalia considered. The pain, the fear, the nights wondering if federal agents would knock on her door, the humiliation of being treated as disposable, the rage of discovering her marriage was a manipulation. No, she finally said, because that experience taught me who I am when everything is stripped away. It taught me that power without conscience is hollow, that America's promise isn't perfection, it's the possibility of justice if you fight for it. She raised her glass. Julian filed my deportation papers, thinking he could make me disappear. Instead, he gave me a reason to become visible, powerful, and permanent. So here's to turning weapons into wings. Here's to the women who refuse to disappear. Here's to proving that leaving first isn't always losing. Sometimes it's surviving, thriving, and transforming. Everyone drank to that. In the end, power isn't about how much money you have or how many people you can control. Real power is resilience. It's taking your deportation papers and turning them into a testimony. It's transforming your pain into purpose. It's refusing to let anyone, no matter how wealthy, connected, or cruel, define your worth. Julian Vance tried to make Natalia Reyes disappear from America. Instead, he disappeared from relevance, while she became permanent. He filed her deportation papers. But she's the one who stayed. And guess who left first? The man who thought power meant controlling others. The woman who discovered power means controlling your own story. If this story moved you, if Natalia's fight resonated with your own battles, if you believe in justice even when the system fails, leave a comment. Share this with someone who needs to hear that fighting back is possible. Subscribe to Mr. Douglas Stories for more tales of courage, redemption, and the kind of strength that breaks chains. Remember, the person who files deportation papers isn't always the one who gets to stay. Sometimes justice has different plans, and sometimes the woman they tried to silence becomes the voice that changes everything. Mr. Douglas Stories, where every ending is just a new beginning.